I was kicked out by my daughter-in-law after my son's death. Then the will changed everything. Part 1. The phone call that shattered my world. The champagne had just been poured. Crystal flutes caught the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse, casting rainbow prisms across the marble countertops. I was celebrating closing the Patterson deal, $15 million, the culmination of 6 months of negotiation. At 56, I was at the peak of my career, the first Black woman to make senior partner at Morrison & Associates in the firm's 100-year history. Then my phone rang. Mrs. Catherine Williams? The voice was professional, detached. This is Officer Martinez with the Chicago Police Department. The champagne flute slipped from my fingers, shattering against the floor. But I barely heard it, because the next words turned my entire world into a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Ma'am, I'm sorry to inform you that your son, Marcus Williams, was involved in a serious automobile accident this evening. He was pronounced dead at the scene at 6:47 p.m. Dead. My Marcus. My only child. The boy I'd raised alone after his father walked out when he was 3. The brilliant young architect who'd graduated top of his class from MIT. The man who'd called me just that morning to tell me about his latest project, his voice bubbling with excitement about some sustainable housing initiative. Gone. Just like that. I don't remember the drive to Chicago. Don't remember packing, calling my assistant, or boarding my private jet. The next clear memory I have is standing in the county morgue, staring down at my son's face, so peaceful, as if he were merely sleeping. The right side bore the evidence of impact, but his left profile was untouched, still so heartbreakingly handsome, still my baby boy. I need to see my daughter-in-law, I heard myself say, and my grandson. Where's little Jordan? The medical examiner shifted uncomfortably. The family was contacted, ma'am. Mrs. Williams, your daughter-in-law, said she'd handle the arrangements. Handle the arrangements. As if burying my son was a business transaction. But I pushed down my irritation. Melissa was grieving too. She'd just lost her husband. I needed to be there for her, for 6-year-old Jordan. We needed to support each other through this impossible darkness. If only I'd known then what I know now. But before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand the full story, because what my daughter-in-law did to me was only possible because of the life I'd built and the secrets I didn't know my son was keeping. Part 2. The house that love built Marcus and Melissa's home stood in Kenwood, one of Chicago's most prestigious neighborhoods. I'd bought it for them 4 years ago as a wedding gift, a stunning Victorian brownstone worth $2.3 million even then. The market value had only climbed since. I'd spared no expense on renovations. The kitchen alone cost $200,000. Italian marble, custom cabinetry, top-of-the-line appliances. I'd wanted my son and his new wife to have everything, to never want for anything the way I had growing up in the South Side projects. My driver pulled up to the house at 11 p.m. Every window blazed with light. Cars lined the circular driveway. I recognized some from Marcus's firm, others from Melissa's social circle. A gathering then. People coming together to mourn. I rang the doorbell, my overnight bag heavy in my hand. The door swung open. Melissa stood there in black already, though it had been less than 6 hours. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her blue eyes red-rimmed but calculating. Even in grief, she looked like she'd stepped out of a catalog, the picture-perfect widow. "Catherine," she said flatly. Not Mom, as she'd called me since the wedding. Just my first name, cold and distant. "Melissa, sweetheart." I reached for her, but she stepped back. "I'm so sorry. I came as soon as I heard. How's Jordan? Is he asleep?" "Jordan is fine. He's upstairs with my mother." Her mother, Sharon Peterson, the woman who'd never hidden her disdain for me, who'd made pointed comments at the wedding about mixed marriages and cultural differences, the woman who'd tried to convince Marcus to sign a prenup, which I'd advised against. We were family now, after all. "Can I see him?" I asked. I know he must be devastated. I thought we could. Now isn't a good time." Melissa crossed her arms. She didn't move from the doorway. Behind her, I could see people moving through my son's house. My house, technically, since the deed was in my name until Marcus's 35th birthday, per the trust arrangement. "Melissa, I know you're in shock, but we need to make decisions. The funeral arrangements are already being handled." Her voice was sharp, crisp. Marcus left instructions. Very specific instructions. Something in her tone made my stomach clench. What kind of instructions? The kind that make it clear what he wanted, for his funeral, for his assets, for his son. She paused, and I swear I saw something flicker in her eyes. Triumph? For his mother. I don't understand. Marcus didn't want you involved, Catherine. He was very clear about that in his will. He knew you'd try to take over, to control everything like you always do. He wanted his final wishes respected, and I intend to honor them. The words hit me like physical blows. That's not possible. Marcus and I talked every day. We were close. He would never... Close? Melissa laughed, a brittle sound. Is that what you call it? Calling him 5 times a day to check up on him? Criticizing every decision I made about our home, our son? Showing up uninvited to drop by and then staying for hours, rearranging our furniture, telling the nanny how to do her job. I was trying to help. You were trying to control, just like you controlled his entire life. Do you know he was in therapy, Catherine? For anxiety? Because he could never live up to your expectations, could never be enough for the great Catherine Williams? My vision blurred. This couldn't be real. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. Let me come in. We can talk about this in the morning. There's nothing to talk about. Melissa's hand moved to the door. Marcus's wishes were explicit. You're not welcome here. Not now, not at the funeral, not ever. This is my house now, and you need to leave. Your house? The words came out sharper than I intended. Melissa, legally. That house is what? Her eyes glittered. Yours? Are you really going to pull rank right now, hours after your son died? Are you going to threaten me, make demands, prove to everyone that Marcus was right about you? Behind her, I saw faces turning our way. Marcus's colleagues, Melissa's friends, all watching this scene unfold. What I didn't know then, what I wouldn't discover for 3 more days, was that Melissa had been planning this moment for months, and the papers she'd just filed with the probate court would make everything so much worse. I stood there on the porch of the house I'd bought, barred from saying goodbye to my only child, and felt the first cold touch of genuine fear. Please, I whispered, please don't do this. Let me see Jordan. Let me help plan Marcus's funeral. He was my son. He was my husband. Melissa's voice was ice. And you've done enough. Goodbye, Catherine. The door closed in my face. I stood there for a long moment, hearing the lock click, seeing the curtains twitch as someone peeked out at me. Then, somehow, I made my way back to the car. Where to, Mrs. Williams? My driver asked gently. Where indeed? To a hotel? Back to New York? To a place that felt less and less like home with each passing second? The Peninsula, I finally said. Downtown. As we pulled away, I looked back at the house one last time. In an upstairs window, I saw a small face pressed against the glass. Jordan, my grandson, the little boy who called me Grandma Cat and drew me pictures and begged for my famous sweet potato pie every Sunday. He waved, small hand against the glass. Then someone, Melissa's mother, I think, pulled him away, and the curtain fell. Part 3. The will that changed everything. The Peninsula Hotel suite was luxurious. Lake views, king bed, separate sitting area, but I barely saw it. I sat in the dark, still in my coat, phone clutched in my hand. I must have picked it up a dozen times to call Marcus before remembering each time that I couldn't, that I would never call him again. At 3 a.m., unable to sleep, I finally opened my laptop and did what any lawyer would do. I started researching Illinois estate law, probate procedures, rights of parents versus spouses. I read until my eyes burned, until the sun rose over Lake Michigan, until I understood the precarious position I was in. If Marcus had truly left a will naming Melissa as executor and primary beneficiary, my rights as his mother were limited, not non-existent. I could contest, of course, especially if there was evidence of undue influence or if Marcus had been coerced, but it would be ugly, public, expensive, and it would mean going to war with the mother of my only grandchild. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Funeral is Saturday, 2 p.m., St. Patrick's Cathedral. Family only. Your presence is neither required nor desired. Melissa. Family only. As if I wasn't family. As if I hadn't given birth to Marcus, raised him, sacrificed everything to give him opportunities I never had. I called my attorney, David Chen, despite the early hour. He picked up on the second ring, one of the benefits of paying him $700 an hour. Catherine, what's wrong? I told him everything. The accident. The door closed in my face. The threats about the will. Send me whatever documentation you have, he said immediately. I'll file a motion to access the will and any related estate documents. We'll also request immediate visitation rights with your grandson. But Catherine, he paused. This could get complicated. If Marcus really did express wishes that you be excluded, he didn't, I said firmly. Whatever Melissa's claiming, Marcus wouldn't do that. We were close. She's lying, or she coerced him, or... We'll find out. But you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that he did leave instructions you weren't expecting. People sometimes keep secrets from those closest to them, especially about end-of-life planning. I hung up feeling worse than before. Could Marcus really have written a will excluding me? Had he been that unhappy? That desperate to escape my influence? No. I refused to believe it. The next 3 days were a blur of legal maneuvering and cold silence. David filed motions. Melissa's attorney, someone I didn't recognize, clearly hired specifically for this purpose, responded with a restraining order request, claiming I was harassing her during her time of grief. We reached a compromise. I could attend the funeral but must maintain a distance of at least 20 feet from Melissa and Jordan at all times. I could not approach them, speak to them, or cause any disruption. The funeral itself was torture. I sat in the back of the church, the back, while Melissa played the grieving widow in the front row, Jordan beside her in a tiny suit. My grandson kept turning around, looking for me, until Melissa's mother physically redirected him forward. The eulogies were worse. Melissa spoke, of course, about her Marcus and their perfect life together, and how he'd been the best husband and father anyone could ask for. She didn't mention me, not once. Marcus's best friend from MIT, Devin, gave a beautiful speech about their college days, their shared dreams of changing the world through sustainable architecture. He mentioned me briefly, Marcus's incredible mother who supported every dream, and I saw Melissa's jaw tighten. But the real shock came during the reception, held at the house. Our house, where I was not invited but heard about from Devin, who called me in dismay. Catherine, you need to hear this, he said, his voice shaking. Melissa just announced that Marcus left everything to her. The house, the insurance, his stake in the firm, everything. She says he wrote a letter explaining why he was cutting you out. She read parts of it to people. My blood ran cold. What did it say? That you were controlling, overbearing, that he needed to protect his family from your influence. Catherine, I don't believe it. Marcus never said anything like that to me. Something's wrong here. I thanked him and immediately called David. I need that will, I said without preamble. Now, whatever it takes. It's being filed with probate tomorrow, David replied. I've already arranged for us to get a copy the moment it's public record. But Catherine, I did some preliminary research on Melissa. You should know. She comes from money. But her family cut her off 2 years ago. Financial disputes. She and Marcus were living well beyond their means. There were some irregularities with credit cards in Marcus's name, large transfers from his accounts to ones I can't trace yet. You think she was stealing from him? I think we need to look very carefully at the timeline of when this will was created, who was present, and what Marcus's state of mind was. I also think we need to get ahead of this before she drains any remaining assets. The next morning, David and I met at his office. He slid a thick document across his mahogany desk, the will, all 53 pages of it. I read in growing horror. Marcus had indeed left everything to Melissa. The house, even though legally it was still in my name via the trust, but the will claimed Marcus had made arrangements to transfer it. His $2 million life insurance policy, his retirement accounts, his stake in his architecture firm, worth at least $800,000. Total assets, over $4 million. To me, nothing. Not $1, not one photograph, not even his old childhood drawings I'd saved in a box in my apartment. But it was the letter that destroyed me. A personal statement signed and dated 6 months earlier, ostensibly in Marcus's handwriting. To my mother, Catherine Williams. I'm writing this because I need you to understand why I've made the decisions I have. All my life, you've loved me. I don't doubt that. But your love has been suffocating, controlling. You've never trusted me to make my own decisions, to live my own life. You bought me a house, but you held the deed. You paid for my education, but you chose my major. You gave me opportunities, but you never gave me freedom. Every choice had to meet your approval. Every friend had to be vetted. Every career move had to align with your vision of success. Melissa loves me for who I am, not who you want me to be. She sees me, accepts me, supports me. With her, I can finally breathe. I can finally be just Marcus, not Catherine Williams' son, not the one who has to prove he's worthy of all you sacrificed. I'm leaving everything to her because she's my future. She and Jordan are my family now. I hope someday you'll understand. I hope someday you'll forgive me. But I need to protect them from your need to control everything, everyone. I need to set them and myself free. I love you, Mom, but from a distance, that's the only way this works. Please respect my wishes. Please let us go. Your son, Marcus. I read it 3 times, then I set it down very carefully on David's desk. It's a forgery, I said quietly. David looked at me with sympathy. Catherine, it's a forgery, I repeated more firmly this time. I know my son's handwriting. I know his speech patterns. He would never use the phrase, suffocating love. He would never sign a letter, your son, Marcus. He called me Mama in person and Mom in writing, always, since he was 4 years old. David leaned forward. Are you absolutely certain? I'm certain. I met his eyes. My son didn't write this, or if he did, he was coerced, drugged, something. This isn't him. This isn't my Marcus. Then we fight, David said grimly. We fight with everything we have. What we didn't know yet, what we wouldn't discover until the investigation was well underway, was that Marcus's signature on that will wasn't the only document Melissa had forged. And the real reason she needed me gone had nothing to do with control or family drama. It had everything to do with money she'd stolen and a secret she'd killed to protect. The war had begun, but I had no idea how deep the betrayal went. Part 4. The Forensics Don't Lie. David Chen wasn't just a probate attorney. He was one of the most ruthless litigators in Illinois, and I'd kept him on retainer for 15 years for exactly this reason. Within 48 hours of reading the will, he'd assembled a team that would have made the FBI jealous. We hired a forensic document examiner, a handwriting analyst, a digital forensics expert to examine the metadata on the PDF version of the will filed with the court, and a private investigator named Sarah Mendez who specialized in financial fraud. If there's dirt, I'll find it, Sarah told me at our first meeting in David's office. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of confidence that came from 20 years with the Chicago PD's fraud division. But you need to be prepared for what I might uncover. Sometimes the truth isn't what we want to hear. I just want the truth, I said, whatever it is. The first break came from the document examiner, Dr. Philip Morrison. He spent 3 days with the original will, which David had subpoenaed from the probate court, examining it under everything from ultraviolet light to electron microscopy. His report was damning. The signature is consistent with Marcus Williams's known handwriting, Dr. Morrison told us in a meeting. But, and this is crucial, the pressure patterns are wrong. When someone signs their name naturally, there are variations in pressure, slight tremors, natural irregularities. This signature shows remarkably even pressure throughout, which suggests it was either traced or created by someone with a very steady hand copying from an exemplar. So, it's a forgery? I asked. I'd say there's a 75% probability, but more importantly, look at this. He pulled up a microscopic image on his laptop. See these fiber patterns? The paper claims to be standard legal document paper dated 6 months ago, but the fiber composition matches paper manufactured only in the last 2 months. This document was created recently, then backdated. David was already typing notes furiously. That's fraud. That's criminal fraud. There's more, Dr. Morrison continued. The ink. Marcus supposedly signed this 6 months ago, in March. But this particular ink formulation, we can date it by the chemical composition, wasn't available until June. Whoever created this document used supplies that didn't exist when Marcus allegedly signed it. I felt vindication wash over me, followed immediately by rage. Melissa had forged my son's will. She'd faked his signature, his wishes, his final words, all to steal his assets. But why? Why go to such elaborate lengths? Sarah Mendez provided the answer. I've been digging into Melissa's financial history, she reported at our next meeting, and it's a mess. Her family cut her off 2 years ago after she embezzled $50,000 from her father's company. He's in medical supplies. Didn't press charges, just severed ties. Since then, she's been living on credit cards. Sarah pulled up a spreadsheet. These are the accounts I've been able to trace. 17 credit cards, all maxed out. Total debt, $347,000. I stared at the numbers. How? Marcus made good money. They had no mortgage. I owned the house. How could she accumulate that much debt? Shopping, spa treatments, a gambling problem. She's got a VIP account at 3 casinos. And get this, she's been transferring money from Marcus's business accounts. Small amounts at first, a few thousand here and there. But in the last 6 months, she escalated. She took $120,000 from his firm's operating account that he was managing. Marcus would have noticed, I said immediately. He did. Sarah slid over a printed email. Look at this. I pulled it from Marcus's work computer. His firm gave us access after I explained the fraud investigation. He sent this to Melissa 3 weeks before he died. I read with mounting horror. Melissa, we need to talk. I just got a call from our accountant. There's $120,000 missing from the operating account. She says the transfers were authorized with my login, but I never made them. I need you to be honest with me. Did you access my accounts? Because if you did, we have a serious problem. This is business money, money that isn't mine to lose. I could be sued. I could lose my partnership. Call me immediately. Did she respond? I asked. Not by email, but here's where it gets interesting. Sarah pulled up another document. 2 days after that email, Marcus called his life insurance company and tried to change his beneficiary from Melissa to you. They required a written request, which he said he'd mail. That request never arrived. The room was silent for a moment as the implications sank in. You think she killed him? I whispered. I think the timing is suspicious as hell, Sarah said bluntly. He discovers she's stolen from him. He tries to change his life insurance. 3 weeks later, he's dead in a single-car accident that the police report says was consistent with high speed and possible driver impairment. They found alcohol in his system, 0.09, just over the legal limit. Marcus didn't drink and drive, I said immediately. Ever. After his father's drunk driving accident when he was little, Marcus was paranoid about it. He'd take a cab if he had one beer. That's what his friends told me too. Sarah leaned forward. I've requested the full police report and autopsy. If there's anything hinky about that accident, we'll find it. David was already on his phone. I'm calling the state's attorney's office. If there's evidence of fraud, possibly evidence of foul play in Marcus's death, they need to open a criminal investigation immediately. But what none of us knew yet, what wouldn't come out until the trial, was that Melissa hadn't acted alone. And the conspiracy went deeper than any of us imagined. Part 5. The walls close. The criminal investigation moved faster than I expected. Within a week, the state's attorney had assigned a prosecutor, Amanda Rodriguez, who had a reputation for taking down white-collar criminals with extreme prejudice. Mrs. Williams, she said at our first meeting, I want to be clear about something. If your daughter-in-law forged documents and stole money, I'll prosecute her to the fullest extent of the law. But I need you to understand that this investigation might uncover things about your son that you'd rather not know. Family finances can be complicated. Sometimes both spouses are complicit in... My son was a victim, I interrupted. He discovered she was stealing, and 3 weeks later he was dead. That's not coincidence. Amanda studied me for a long moment. We'll follow the evidence wherever it leads. That's all I can promise. The evidence led somewhere I never expected. Sarah Mendez called me at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday, 3 weeks into the investigation. Catherine, you need to hear this. I've been tracing the money Melissa stole, trying to figure out where it all went. A lot of it was gambling losses, like I said. But there were regular payments, $5,000 a month, every month for the past 18 months, to an LLC called Northside Holdings. What's Northside Holdings? That's what took me so long to figure out. It's a shell company, layers upon layers of paperwork, but I finally traced it back to a man named Richard Kowalski. He's a lawyer, corporate law, some criminal defense, and he's also Melissa's ex-boyfriend from college. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Go on. They were engaged before she met Marcus, broke up badly. Richard wanted her to sign a prenup before the wedding. She refused, but they reconnected about 2 years ago, right around when her family cut her off. I've got phone records showing hundreds of calls between them. And here's the kicker. Richard was the attorney who drafted Marcus's will. The forged will. Exactly. I think they planned this together. She racks up debt, steals from Marcus to cover it, and pay Richard for his services. When Marcus discovers the theft, they panic. They need to act fast before he can change his beneficiaries or divorce her. So they kill him and forge a will, making her sole beneficiary. Can you prove it? Working on it. But I've got phone records showing Richard called Melissa 17 times the day before Marcus died. And get this, Richard has a connection to a guy named Danny Sullivan, who works at a pharmacy. Danny has 2 DUIs and is currently on probation for insurance fraud. I think he's the one who provided whatever drug they used to impair Marcus before the accident. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture so ugly I could barely stand to look at it. My son had been murdered by his wife and her lover, for insurance money and to cover up theft. We need to tell Amanda Rodriguez, I said. Already did. She's getting warrants as we speak, phone records, financial records, surveillance footage from the night Marcus died. Catherine, this is going to blow up into something huge. Are you prepared for that? Was I? Prepared to watch my daughter-in-law arrested? To have my son's death become a media spectacle? To learn every ugly detail of his final weeks? I'm prepared to get justice for my son, I said firmly. The arrests came 2 days later. Melissa was picked up at the house, my house, at 6 a.m. They brought her out in handcuffs, still in her silk pajamas, screaming about harassment and false accusations. Jordan, thank God, was still asleep. Richard Kowalski was arrested at his downtown law office, surrounded by his startled colleagues and clients. The charges: conspiracy to commit murder, forgery, fraud, theft. Danny Sullivan was arrested at the pharmacy where he worked. He started talking immediately, desperate for a plea deal, and what he told them confirmed our worst fears. But even with 2 arrests and a confession, the real shock was still coming, because buried in Danny Sullivan's statement was a detail that would change everything I thought I knew about the last year of my son's life. Part 6. The truth about Marcus Danny Sullivan's confession came in fits and starts, words tumbling over each other as he tried to minimize his own role while implicating Melissa and Richard. Amanda Rodriguez let me read the transcript, warning me it would be difficult. Difficult didn't begin to cover it. Richard came to me about 3 months before it happened, Danny said in his statement. Said he had a friend whose husband was being difficult about money. Said they needed something that would make the husband more pliable, easier to manipulate. I'm not proud of it, but I needed the money. Richard was paying $10,000 for the prescription. What prescription? The detective asked. Lorazepam, anxiety medication, strong stuff. I filled a script in a fake name, gave it to Richard. He said they'd slip small doses into the husband's drinks, make him more anxious and dependent, more likely to give in to what they wanted. And did you know they planned to kill him? No, I swear, I thought it was just, I thought they were trying to control him, not kill him. But then Richard called me the week before it happened. Said they needed something stronger, something that would impair judgment, slow reaction time, but look like alcohol in a tox screen. What did you give them? Chloral hydrate. It's a sedative. Mixed with even a small amount of alcohol, it would have made him drowsy, confused, slowed his reflexes. I told Richard it was dangerous, that the guy shouldn't drive after taking it. Richard said that was the point. I had to stop reading. My son's last moments, confused, impaired, unable to control his car as it veered off Lakeshore Drive at 70 miles per hour and slammed into a concrete barrier. Had he known what was happening? Had he realized in those final seconds that his wife had poisoned him? But the confession continued, and this part made me physically ill. Richard told me they'd been planning it for months. See, the wife, Melissa, her name is, she was already stealing from the husband. Had been for over a year, but he found out, threatened to press charges. That's when they decided he had to go. Richard said Melissa had already tried once before, 6 months earlier. Tried what before? To kill him. Said she'd pushed him down the stairs at their house, made it look like an accident. But he survived, just broke his arm. That's when they realized they needed a better plan. I remembered that fall. Marcus had called me from the hospital, laughing it off as clumsiness, saying he'd tripped on a toy Jordan left on the stairs. I'd driven to Chicago immediately, worried, but Marcus insisted he was fine. Melissa had been so attentive, so concerned, the perfect worried wife. It had all been an act. She'd tried to murder him 6 months before she succeeded. The confession went on, detailing the night of Marcus's death. How Melissa had insisted they go to dinner to talk things through about the missing money. How she'd ordered them both drinks, vodka tonic for him, wine for her. How she'd excused herself to the bathroom and drugged his drink with the chloral hydrate Danny had provided. How Marcus had started feeling strange almost immediately, dizzy, confused. How he'd insisted on leaving, on driving home because he felt sick. How Melissa had reluctantly agreed, then called Richard the moment Marcus got in the car. How they'd waited for the news, which came 40 minutes later. Single car accident, driver deceased at the scene, alcohol and sedatives in his system. Perfect murder. Or it would have been if Marcus hadn't tried to change his beneficiary, if he hadn't sent that email about the stolen money, if I hadn't fought back. Amanda Rodriguez called me after I finished reading. We have enough for murder 1. she said quietly. For both of them. Danny's testimony combined with the phone records, the forged will, the financial evidence. It's an airtight case. They're going to spend the rest of their lives in prison. Good, I said flatly. There's something else you should know. Amanda paused. We found journals. Marcus kept journals, hidden in his office at the architecture firm, the last few months of entries. Catherine, he knew something was wrong. He didn't know specifically what, but he knew Melissa was lying to him, manipulating him. He wrote about feeling paranoid, about not trusting his own judgment. We think that was the lorazepam. Danny's confession says Richard told him they'd been drugging Marcus for months to keep him compliant while Melissa stole. Can I read them? My voice cracked. The journals? They're evidence, but I can get you copies. You should know, though, Marcus wrote about you, too. About feeling torn between his wife and his mother. About loving you but feeling trapped by your expectations. It's complicated. I want to read them anyway. I want to understand. The journals arrived the next day, photocopies of Marcus's neat handwriting. I locked myself in my hotel room and read them straight through. And with each page, my heart broke a little more. Because Danny Sullivan was right. Marcus had been drugged for months, maybe longer. His entries from a year ago were clear, focused, rational. But as the months progressed, they became increasingly paranoid, anxious, confused. January 15th. Had another argument with Melissa about money. I know we're not broke. I checked the accounts. But she says she needs more for household expenses. $10,000 a month seems excessive. But maybe I'm out of touch with costs. I've been feeling so scattered lately, like I can't focus on anything. March 3rd. Mom called again today about Sunday dinner. I love her, but sometimes I can't breathe. Every decision has to go through her. Melissa says it's not normal that healthy mothers don't control their adult children like this. Maybe she's right? I can't tell anymore. Can't tell what's normal and what's not. May 12th. Something's wrong with the firm accounts. $120,000 missing. Accountant says the transfers had my authorization, but I don't remember making them. Did I? Am I losing my mind? I've been so anxious lately, having panic attacks. Melissa suggested I see someone, but I'm afraid. What if there's something really wrong with me? July 20th. I think Melissa might be having an affair. Found a burner phone in her purse yesterday. When I confronted her, she said it was for her NA meetings, that she didn't want me tracking her. But Melissa doesn't go to NA. She doesn't even drink much. Why would she lie? Or am I being paranoid again? The therapist prescribed lorazepam for my anxiety. Melissa's been wonderful about making sure I take it. She really does care about me. The therapist. The lorazepam prescription. Melissa controlling his medication. It all made sick, horrible sense. But the journal entry from 3 days before his death was what destroyed me completely. July 30th. I called Mom today. Didn't tell her what's been happening. The missing money, my suspicions about Melissa, how scared I am. But just hearing her voice made me feel safer. She told me about the Patterson deal, how proud she was of herself. I was proud of her too. She's so strong, so certain. Everything I'm not right now. I wanted to tell her everything, to ask for help. But I'm 34 years old. I can't keep running to Mommy every time life gets hard. That's what Melissa says anyway, that I need to be a man, handle my own problems. But Mom would know what to do. She always does. Maybe I should call her back. Maybe I should... No, I need to handle this myself. I need to confront Melissa, get answers, fix whatever's broken in our marriage. For Jordan's sake, if nothing else. I'm meeting her for dinner tomorrow night. We're going to talk this through like adults. I'm going to demand the truth about the money, about where she's been going, about everything. I hope I'm strong enough. I hope I'm wrong about all of it. I hope tomorrow things start getting better. But I'm scared. God, I'm so scared. And I miss my mom. That was his last entry, dated July 31st. He died August 2nd. I called Mom today. Those 4 words echoed in my mind. That had been our last conversation. Him congratulating me on my business deal, me too absorbed in my own success to hear the desperation beneath his cheerful tone. I'd been so busy celebrating that I hadn't noticed my son was crying out for help. If I'd paid attention, if I'd asked the right questions, if I'd gotten on a plane that day instead of 2 days later, he might still be alive. Part 7. The Trial That Gripped Chicago. The trial started 4 months later, in January. By then it had become a media sensation. Wealthy black businesswoman's son murdered by his white wife and her lover for insurance money. The racial dynamics alone ensured non-stop coverage. But the forged will, the drugging, the calculated cruelty of it all made it irresistible to reporters. The Black Widow murder trial, the tabloids called it. Court TV broadcast every moment. Nancy Grace did nightly segments. The courtroom was packed daily with journalists, true crime enthusiasts, and people from my world, fellow attorneys, business associates, friends I hadn't spoken to in months. I attended every day of the trial, sat in the front row, directly behind the prosecution, where Melissa would have to see me every time she turned around. I wanted her to see me. I wanted her to know that I hadn't gone quietly, that I'd fought back, that I'd won. David Chen sat beside me. On my other side, Jordan's temporary guardian, my cousin Angela, who'd fought for and won custody while Melissa awaited trial. Jordan himself stayed with Angela, shielded from the media circus, seeing a therapist 3 times a week to process the trauma of losing his father and learning his mother was a killer. I'd seen him twice since the arrests, brief supervised visits where he'd clung to me and cried, asking why Mommy was in jail when Daddy was coming back, if everything was his fault. 6 years old and his world had shattered completely. "We'll get through this, baby," I'd promised him, stroking his hair. "Grandma Kat's here. I'm not going anywhere ever again." The prosecution's case was devastating. Amanda Rodriguez was methodical, building the narrative piece by piece. First, the financial evidence. Bank statements showing the systematic theft. Credit card bills showing Melissa's spending. The LLC payments to Richard Kowalski. The gambling debts. Then the phone records. Hundreds of calls between Melissa and Richard, increasing in frequency in the weeks before Marcus's death. 17 calls the day before the murder. A call from Melissa to Richard at 8:47 p.m. on the night Marcus died, exactly 12 minutes after Marcus left the restaurant, exactly 17 minutes before the accident. The forensic evidence, Dr. Morrison's testimony about the forged will, the backdated documents, the traced signature, the toxicology showing chloral hydrate in Marcus's system, a drug he'd never been prescribed. That shouldn't have been there. Danny Sullivan's testimony was the centerpiece. He took the stand in an orange jumpsuit, already sentenced to 15 years for his role in exchange for his cooperation. He looked like a broken man, hands shaking as he described selling the drugs, watching the news about Marcus's death, realizing he'd helped commit murder. "I think about it every day," he said, his voice cracking. "That man had a little boy. He had a mother who loved him, and I helped take him away from them for $10,000. There's no excuse. I deserve everything I get." Melissa's attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Walsh, tried to shred his credibility on cross-examination. "You're a convicted felon. You've lied to get this plea deal. How can the jury trust anything you say?" "They can trust it because I'm going to prison either way," Danny shot back. "I don't have any reason to lie anymore. I just want to tell the truth." Then came the digital forensics expert who'd recovered deleted texts from Melissa's phone, texts to Richard discussing the plan and making sure it looks natural, and that bitch Catherine will never see a dime. But the moment that broke Melissa's defense completely came when the prosecution played the 911 call from the night Marcus died. The courtroom fell silent as the recording began. 911, what's your emergency? There's been an accident. Melissa's voice high and panicked. On Lakeshore Drive near the Oakwood exit, a car hit the barrier. I was driving behind him. I think it's my husband. Ma'am, stay calm. Are you injured? No, I'm fine. I'm in my car. But his car, there's smoke. Oh God, I think he's hurt. We're sending emergency services now. Ma'am, did you witness the accident? Yes, he was driving erratically, swerving. I was following him home from dinner because he wasn't feeling well. I was worried about him driving, but he insisted. And then he veered off the road and hit the barrier. Oh God, this is my fault. I should have made him let me drive. Perfect performance. The distraught wife blaming herself, setting up the narrative that Marcus had been impaired. But then Amanda played a second recording. The call from Melissa's cell phone records, time-stamped 8:47 p.m., 17 minutes before the 911 call. It's done. Melissa's voice, calm and cold. He's on the road now. Should happen any minute. I'm following at a distance. Call you back after. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Melissa's face went white. Amanda let the chaos settle before speaking. That call was to Richard Kowalski, 17 minutes before Mrs. Williams called 911 in her panic. She knew what was about to happen. She was following her drugged husband, waiting for him to crash, ready with her performance. This was premeditated murder. Patricia Walsh fought valiantly, but there was no recovering from that. She tried to argue that Melissa had been coerced by Richard, that she'd been afraid of him, that she'd been manipulated just like Marcus had been. But the financial evidence disproved it. The emails between them showed equal partnership in the planning. And when Richard took the stand, compelled to testify after his own attorney advised him to take a deal, he threw Melissa under the bus completely. It was her idea, he said flatly, all of it. She came to me 2 years ago, said she'd made financial mistakes, needed help covering her tracks. I gave her advice, helped her set up the LLCs. Then last year, she said Marcus was becoming a problem, that he was controlling their money too tightly, that she couldn't breathe. She asked me to help her divorce him. And you suggested killing him instead? Amanda asked. No, she did. Said a divorce would mean a prenup would kick in. Marcus had insisted on one after they'd been married 2 years, once he learned about her family cutting her off. She'd get nothing, but if he died, she'd get everything, the life insurance, the house, his firm stake. She could pay off her debts, and we could be together. And you agreed? Richard's jaw tightened. I loved her. I thought Marcus was this controlling mama's boy who didn't appreciate her. She painted him as this villain, and I believed her. So yes, I helped plan it. Got the drugs, helped forge the will, coached her on what to say. But it was her hand on the wheel, her idea, her murder. Melissa screamed at him from the defense table. You liar! You forced me! You said you'd expose me if I didn't go along with it. The judge called for order. Patricia tried to salvage something from the outburst, but it was too late. The jury had seen Melissa lose control, had heard her confirm she'd been part of the plan. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, conspiracy. Fraud, forgery. Richard Kowalski. Same verdict. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later, but everyone knew what was coming. Illinois had no death penalty, but life without parole was guaranteed. I watched Melissa's face as the verdicts were read, watched the color drain from her skin, watched her mouth open and close soundlessly, watched her turn to look at me finally, really look at me, with something like understanding in her eyes. She'd underestimated me, thought she could steal my son, forge his will, kick me out of his life, and I'd just accept it. Thought that because she was young and white and pretty, because she played the grieving widow so well, no one would question her. She'd been wrong. But even with Melissa and Richard convicted, there was one more battle to fight, one that would determine not just who got Marcus's estate, but what kind of future my grandson would have. Part 8. The Battle for Jordan. The day after the guilty verdicts, I filed for permanent custody of Jordan. Melissa's parental rights would be terminated once she was sentenced. Illinois law doesn't allow convicted murderers to maintain custody of their children. But the question was, who would raise him now? I expected it to be straightforward. I was his grandmother, wealthy, stable, with no criminal record and every resource imaginable to provide for him. But Melissa's mother, Sharon Peterson, had other ideas. She filed a competing custody petition 2 days after mine, arguing that Jordan needed stability and continuity, that I was an aging workaholic who'd already proven herself incapable of healthy parenting with her own son, and that she could provide a traditional, wholesome two-parent home with her husband. The racism wasn't even subtle. David Chen was furious. She's arguing that Marcus's problems, the anxiety, the supposed control issues, were your fault, that your parenting created vulnerability that Melissa exploited. It's victim-blaming garbage, but it's also dangerous. Some judges might buy it. The custody hearing was scheduled for February, 6 weeks after the criminal verdicts. In the meantime, Jordan remained with my cousin Angela in a sort of legal limbo that was killing all of us. I visited him 3 times a week. We'd play board games, read stories, bake cookies, anything to create some normalcy. But he was different now. Quieter, more withdrawn. He'd have nightmares, wake up crying for his daddy. His therapist said he was showing signs of complex trauma. He's also confused about his mother, Dr. Reeves told me gently. He knows she's in jail, but no one's explained why in terms he can understand. He thinks maybe he did something wrong, that his mommy's in jail because he was bad. Can I tell him? I asked. Age-appropriate version? I think you should. He needs to understand that his mother made terrible choices, but that none of it was his fault. He needs to know he's safe now. So one Saturday afternoon, I sat Jordan down in Angela's living room with hot chocolate and tried to find words that would make sense to a 6-year-old. Jordan, baby, I need to talk to you about your mommy and daddy. His little face crumpled immediately. Is Daddy still gone? Yes, sweetheart. Daddy's still gone. He's in heaven, remember? And he loves you so much. Why did he go to heaven? This was the impossible part. How do you tell a child his mother killed his father? Daddy had an accident in his car, but here's the thing, Jordan. Sometimes accidents happen because someone makes a very bad choice. Your mommy made some bad choices that hurt people. That's why she's in jail. The police and judges decided she needs to stay there because of the bad choices she made. Did Mommy make Daddy go to heaven? Children were so much smarter than adults gave them credit for. Yes, I said quietly. Mommy did something that made Daddy go to heaven, and I know that's really, really hard to understand. You love Mommy, and it's okay to still love her even though she made terrible choices. But you need to know that none of this is your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You're a good, sweet, perfect boy, and everything that happened is because adults made bad choices. Jordan was quiet for a long time, processing. Then, is Grandma Sharon going to take me away from you? I don't know, baby. There's going to be a meeting with a judge who will decide where you should live. But I promise you, I'm going to fight to keep you with me. Because I love you more than anything in the world, and I want you to be part of my family forever. I want to stay with you, he whispered. I don't want to go with Grandma Sharon. She says mean things about you. She says you're the reason Daddy died. My blood boiled, but I kept my voice calm. Grandma Sharon is wrong and sad and angry. Sometimes people say mean things when they're hurting, but that doesn't make the things true. You're going to win, right? At the meeting with the judge, I'm going to try my hardest. The custody hearing was held in family court, thankfully closed to the media. But that didn't stop the drama. Sharon Peterson showed up dressed like she was going to church. Conservative suit, pearls, hair in a perfect bun. Her husband Robert stood beside her looking stern and patriarchal. They'd brought a lawyer, Henry Caldwell, who specialized in family values cases. code for helping conservative white families fight custody battles against anyone they deemed unsuitable. I showed up in my power suit, custom Armani, perfect tailoring, every inch the successful businesswoman. David flanked me on one side, Angela on the other. The judge was a woman in her 50s, Judge Martha Hamilton. I'd done research. She had a reputation for being tough but fair, prioritizing children's best interests over cultural warfare. Henry Caldwell opened with exactly the argument I'd expected. Your Honor, Jordan Williams has suffered unimaginable trauma. He's lost his father. His mother has been incarcerated. What he needs now is stability, traditional values, and a two-parent home that can provide constant supervision and care. My clients can offer all of that. And Mrs. Catherine Williams cannot? Judge Hamilton asked dryly. Mrs. Williams is 56 years old. She works 80-hour weeks managing a major law firm. She lives in New York City, far from Jordan's school, his friends, his familiar environment. She has no spouse, no partner to help with child rearing. And, Your Honor, he paused dramatically, there's the matter of her parenting history. Explain, Judge Hamilton said, her expression unreadable. Marcus Williams, by all accounts, struggled with anxiety and issues around control. His journals, entered into evidence in the criminal trial, show that he felt smothered by his mother's expectations, unable to make independent decisions. This created a vulnerability that Melissa Williams exploited. While Catherine Williams certainly didn't intend harm, her parenting style contributed to the circumstances that led to Marcus's death. I wanted to stand up and scream, but David put a hand on my arm, and I stayed silent. Judge Hamilton turned to David. Counselor, your response? David stood, and I'd never been more grateful for his brilliant legal mind. Your Honor, that argument is not just offensive, it's factually wrong and legally irrelevant. Marcus Williams was murdered by his wife and her lover for financial gain. That is the sole cause of his death. To blame his mother for his murder is victim blaming of the worst kind. Furthermore, the journals Mr. Caldwell references were written by a man who was being systematically drugged by his murderer. His mental state was compromised. His perceptions were altered. To use those journals as evidence of Mrs. Catherine Williams's parenting is to legitimize the very abuse that killed him. As for Mrs. Williams's qualifications, let's examine the facts. She is financially stable, more than stable. She's wealthy enough to provide Jordan with every advantage. She has a flexible work schedule and has already arranged to work remotely from Chicago 3 days a week to be available for Jordan. She has family support, her cousin Angela, who Jordan already knows and trusts. And most importantly, she has a loving, established relationship with Jordan. He calls her Grandma Cat. He draws her pictures. He told his therapist he wants to live with her. The child's wishes are certainly relevant, Judge Hamilton said, though at 6 years old, not determinative. Of course, Your Honor, but consider the alternative. Sharon and Robert Peterson raised Melissa. They raised a woman who became a murderer, who stole from her husband, who forged legal documents, who callously plotted to kill the father of her child. And rather than taking any responsibility for how their daughter turned out, they're now trying to blame Catherine Williams for being too successful, too involved, too black. Counselor, Judge Hamilton warned, I apologize, Your Honor, but the racial subtext here is impossible to ignore. Traditional values, wholesome environment, two-parent home. These are dog whistles for white and conservative. My client is being penalized for being a successful black woman who had the audacity to raise a successful black son without a husband. Henry Caldwell jumped up. That's outrageous. We never mentioned race. You didn't have to, David shot back. It's implicit in every argument you've made. Judge Hamilton banged her gavel. Enough. I want to hear from the social worker who's been supervising visitation. Ms. Torres? Carmen Torres, a woman in her 30s with kind eyes, stood and pulled out her report. Your Honor, I've observed interactions between Jordan and both parties. My recommendation is clear. Custody should be granted to Catherine Williams. Sharon Peterson made a strangled sound. Jordan is bonded with Mrs. Williams, Carmen continued. He lights up when she visits. They have inside jokes, established routines. She's gentle with him, patient when he has nightmares or meltdowns. She's trauma-informed. She's been reading books about supporting grieving children, coordinating with his therapist, doing everything right. In contrast, Jordan is subdued around the Petersons. He's polite, but distant. Mrs. Peterson is... She paused, choosing words carefully. She's still processing her daughter's conviction. She makes comments that suggest she doesn't fully accept Melissa's guilt. She's told Jordan that Mommy made mistakes and everyone deserves forgiveness. While compassion is admirable, Jordan needs adults who can help him understand in age-appropriate ways that what happened was not okay and not his fault. Has Mrs. Peterson made any inappropriate comments about Mrs. Williams? Judge Hamilton asked. Carmen hesitated. In my presence, no. But Jordan has reported that Mrs. Peterson says negative things about his grandma cat when they're alone. He's confused by it. He loves both of them and doesn't understand why they can't get along. Judge Hamilton made notes, then looked at both parties. I'm going to speak to Jordan privately. Both sides will wait here. The next 30 minutes were agonizing. I sat in the hallway, hands clasped, praying silently. Angela held one of my hands. David paced, muttering about racist dog whistles and family values hypocrisy. Finally, the bailiff called us back in. Judge Hamilton looked tired. I've spoken with Jordan. He's an articulate, intelligent child who's dealing with trauma no 6-year-old should have to face, and he was very clear about what he wants. My heart hammered. Jordan wants to live with his grandma cat. He wants to stay in Chicago so he can visit his father's grave and keep seeing his therapist and stay in his school. He wants his grandma to read him stories and make sweet potato pie and tell him about his daddy when he was little. Sharon Peterson was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Peterson, I understand this is painful, Judge Hamilton said, not unkindly. You've lost your daughter in the worst possible way. But punishing Catherine Williams for your daughter's crimes won't bring Melissa back or erase what she did. Jordan needs stability, love, and truth. Mrs. Williams can provide all three. She ruined my daughter, Sharon burst out. Melissa was fine until Marcus met her. That woman poisoned my daughter's marriage, made her desperate. Mrs. Peterson. Judge Hamilton's voice was sharp now. Your daughter murdered her husband for insurance money. She forged legal documents. She stole hundreds of thousands of dollars. These were her choices. No one forced her hand. And if you cannot accept that reality, you are not fit to raise her traumatized child. The gavel came down. Custody is granted to Catherine Williams with supervised visitation rights for the Petersons, pending completion of family therapy. This hearing is adjourned. I couldn't breathe. David was hugging me. Angela was crying. Across the aisle, Sharon Peterson was sobbing into her husband's shoulder, glaring at me with pure hatred. But I didn't care, because Jordan was mine. Legally, officially, mine. 2 weeks later, at Marcus's grave, I made a promise that would shape the rest of my life. Part 9, Rebuilding What Was Broken. Moving to Chicago permanently wasn't a decision. It was a necessity. Jordan needed stability, familiar surroundings, and I needed to be wherever he was. I kept my partnership at Morrison & Associates, but negotiated a mostly remote arrangement, flying to New York only twice a month for crucial meetings. The penthouse in Manhattan went up for sale. I bought a house in Kenwood, 3 blocks from the brownstone that had been Marcus and Melissa's. I couldn't bear to raise Jordan in that house, with all its ghosts and bad memories. I sold it and let the new owners gut it completely. My house was different. Warm, full of windows and light, with a big backyard where Jordan could play. I decorated his room myself, astronaut theme because he developed a fascination with space. We painted glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling together, making up stories about which constellations his daddy was visiting. The first few months were hard. Jordan had nightmares almost every night. He'd wake up screaming, and I'd hold him until he fell back asleep, humming the same lullabies I'd sung to Marcus 30 years ago. Some mornings he wouldn't get out of bed, crying that he missed his daddy, that he wanted everything to be the way it was before. "I know, baby," I'd whisper. "I miss him too, so much. But we have each other, and we're going to be okay, I promise." Dr. Reeves, his therapist, helped us navigate the grief. She taught me about trauma responses, about the importance of routine and safety. She worked with Jordan on expressing his feelings, on understanding that he could be angry at his mother and still love her, that missing his father didn't mean he was betraying anyone. Slowly, incrementally, Jordan began to heal. The nightmares became less frequent. He started smiling again, laughing at silly jokes, getting excited about school projects. He made friends in the neighborhood, other kids who'd come over to play in our backyard, who'd stay for dinner and call me Mrs. Catherine, with shy smiles. But he still asked questions. Hard questions I wasn't always ready to answer. Why did Mommy want Daddy to die? Did Daddy know Mommy didn't love him anymore? Is it my fault that Mommy's in prison? Are you going to leave me too? That last question broke my heart every time, because underneath all of Jordan's trauma was a bone-deep fear of abandonment. He'd lost his father violently. His mother had turned out to be a monster. Even his grandmother on his mother's side blamed him, in subtle ways, for the family's destruction. "I am never leaving you," I told him firmly every single time he asked. "Never. You're my grandson, and I love you more than anything in this world. I'm going to be here when you wake up, when you go to school, when you come home, when you grow up and graduate and get married and have kids of your own. I'm not going anywhere. Ever. Promise?" "I promise." 6 months after the custody ruling, I got a letter from Melissa. She was in Stateville Correctional Center, serving life without parole. The envelope had been opened and inspected, prison security, but the letter inside was several pages long, handwritten in Melissa's neat script. I debated throwing it away unread, but curiosity won. "Dear Catherine, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know you hate me and you have every right to. I killed your son. I took Marcus away from you, from Jordan, from everyone who loved him. I destroyed our family for money and selfishness, and because I was too much of a coward to just get divorced. I'm not writing to apologize, though I am sorry, for whatever that's worth. I know sorry doesn't bring Marcus back. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I want you to know that I think about it every day, about the moment I put that drug in his drink, about watching him get in the car, knowing what was about to happen, about calling 911 and pretending to be shocked. Every single detail plays on repeat in my mind, and I deserve that torture. I'm writing because I heard you got custody of Jordan, and I need to tell you something. You were right about me. About everything. I was stealing from Marcus. I did manipulate him. I did drug him to keep him compliant. But there's one thing you don't know, one thing I never told anyone. I did love him. Once. When we first met, when he was this brilliant, sweet man who looked at me like I was the most amazing person in the world, I loved him. I loved how much he loved his mother, even when I was jealous of you. I loved his laugh, his ambition, how he'd stay up all night working on designs and emerge so excited to show me what he'd created. But then I ruined it. I started spending money we didn't have. I started lying. And instead of confessing and facing consequences, I dug myself deeper. I told myself Marcus was the problem, too controlling, too much of a mama's boy, too judgmental. I convinced myself that if he were just different, everything would be fine. Richard made it worse. He told me what I wanted to hear, that I deserved better, that Marcus didn't appreciate me, that you were poisoning our marriage. He suggested the drugging first, just small amounts to take the edge off Marcus's anxiety. Then it escalated. The stolen money to pay off debts, the forgery to make sure I'd get the insurance if anything happened, and finally, the murder. I told myself it was survival, that I had no choice. But that's a lie. I had 1,000 choices and I made the worst one every single time. Jordan deserves better than me. He deserves you. Someone strong. Someone who loved his father and will make sure he knows what a good man Marcus was. Please tell him about Marcus. Tell him the good stuff, not just the tragedy. Tell him his father was kind and talented and loved him more than anything. And tell him his mother loved him too. Even though I did terrible, unforgivable things, I loved my son. I just loved myself more, and that's why I'm here. Take care of him, Catherine. Give him the life I destroyed. Melissa. I read the letter 3 times, trying to find meaning in it, trying to understand the woman who'd killed my son. Was she genuinely remorseful? Or just sorry she got caught? Did it even matter? I folded the letter carefully and put it in a locked file. Jordan was too young to read it now, but someday, when he was older, when he asked questions about his mother, maybe he'd need to see it. Maybe it would help him understand that people were complicated, that someone could love you and still hurt you, that monsters were often just broken people who made terrible choices. But that day wouldn't be today. Today, Jordan was 7 years old and learning to be happy again. Today was enough. Part 10. The Final Accounting. Marcus's estate took nearly a year to settle completely. With the will voided due to fraud, his assets were distributed according to Illinois intestacy law, which meant everything went to Jordan, with me as trustee until he turned 18. The house I'd sold for $2.9 million. The life insurance paid out $2 million to Jordan's trust, not to Melissa. Marcus's stake in his architecture firm was valued at $850,000, which the other partners bought out. His retirement accounts, investment portfolios, and other assets brought the total to just over $6 million. But more valuable than the money were the things I recovered that Melissa had tried to destroy. Marcus's journals, which the police had kept as evidence but were finally returned to me. His childhood artwork found in boxes in the brownstones' attic, photo albums of his life, baby pictures, school photos, college graduation, his wedding day, Jordan's birth. Melissa had hidden them all away, perhaps planning to dispose of them once she got rid of me. I created a memory room in our new house. Framed Marcus's architectural drawings on the walls, displayed his MIT diploma, his professional awards, his published designs, filled albums with photos showing Jordan what his father's life had been like, who he'd been before tragedy took him. Jordan spent hours in that room staring at pictures, asking questions. Daddy was really smart, huh? So smart. Brilliant. You got his brain, you know that? Did Daddy want to be an architect when he was my age? He wanted to build rocket ships, actually. Kept drawing them all over everything. I still have one of his rocket designs from first grade. Want to see? These conversations were precious. They kept Marcus alive in Jordan's memory, transformed him from a source of pain into a source of pride. This was my son, accomplished, loved, good, not perfect, but trying. Always trying. The criminal case concluded with Melissa and Richard's sentencing, life without parole for both of them. Danny Sullivan got 15 years and would be eligible for parole in 8. Sharon and Robert Peterson attended the sentencing, sitting on Melissa's side of the courtroom, glaring at me with undisguised hatred. After the sentencing, Sharon approached me in the hallway. Security tensed, ready to intervene if needed, but she just stood there looking old and broken. "You got what you wanted," she said bitterly. "My daughter's life is over. My grandson is being raised by you. The Williams family wins everything." "There are no winners here," I said quietly. Your daughter murdered my son. My grandson lost both his parents. The only thing I got was Jordan, and the burden of raising him through trauma that never should have happened. If you think that's winning, you don't understand anything. Melissa wasn't a monster. Yes, she was. And maybe part of that is on you. Maybe if you taught her to face consequences instead of running from them, to value people over money, to be honest instead of manipulative, maybe Marcus would still be alive. But you didn't. You raised a woman who thought murder was preferable to honesty. So don't come at me about winning. We all lost. Every single one of us. Sharon's face crumpled. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I'll make sure Jordan knows you're his grandmother, I continued. When he's ready, when he asks, I'll tell him about you. I won't poison him against you. I'm not you. But you need to understand that he's my son now, mine, and I will protect him from anyone who tries to hurt him again, even his own blood. I walked away before she could respond. I had nothing left to say to her. Part 11. Letters to Marcus Dr. Reeves suggested I write letters to Marcus as part of my grief process. You didn't get closure, she explained. You didn't get to say goodbye, to tell him everything you needed to say. Writing letters can help. I started writing them at night, after Jordan went to bed. Letters I'd never send to a son who'd never read them. Dear Marcus, you've been gone for 18 months now, and some days it feels like yesterday. Other days it feels like a lifetime ago. Jordan is doing better. He's in second grade now, getting A's and B's, making friends. He has your smile, your laugh, your way of concentrating so hard on things that he bites his lower lip. I wish you could see him. See how brave he is, how resilient. He asks about you all the time, wants to know what you were like at his age, what games you played, what your favorite foods were. I tell him everything I remember, and sometimes it hurts so much I can barely breathe. But I do it anyway, because he deserves to know his father. I read your journals, Marcus, all of them. I know you were struggling. I know you felt trapped between Melissa and me. I know you thought I was controlling, overbearing, too involved in your life. And here's the thing, maybe you were right. Not about everything, but about some things. I did call too much. I did offer opinions you didn't ask for. I did have expectations that weighed on you. I was so afraid of you failing, of you struggling the way I did, that I couldn't step back and let you find your own way. If I could go back, I'd do it differently. I'd call less and listen more. I'd ask what you needed instead of assuming I knew. I'd trust you to make mistakes and learn from them. But I can't go back. All I can do is learn from my mistakes with you and try to do better with Jordan. I'm trying, Marcus. I'm trying to love him without smothering him, to guide him without controlling him, to let him be his own person while still keeping him safe. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, but I'm doing it for you, for him, for the family we should have been. I love you, son. I always did. I always will. Mom epilogue. 5 years later, Jordan turned 12 yesterday. We celebrated with a small party. His school friends, my cousin Angela and her family, and Devin, Marcus's best friend from MIT, who'd become like an uncle to Jordan. The cake was chocolate with vanilla frosting, Jordan's favorite. As he blew out the candles, I saw Marcus in every angle of his face. He was growing into his father's features, but with a confidence Marcus never quite had. Therapy, stability, and unconditional love had given Jordan something precious, the freedom to be himself. After the party, after everyone left and the house was quiet, Jordan came to find me in the kitchen where I was cleaning up. Grandma Cat? He'd started calling me just Grandma now, but sometimes, in tender moments, he still used the old nickname. Yes, baby. Can we visit Dad's grave tomorrow? I want to tell him about turning 12, about making the honor roll, about everything. My throat tightened. Of course we can. He hesitated. Then, do you think he'd be proud of me? I set down the dish I was washing and pulled him into a hug. At 12, he was almost as tall as me now. "Jordan, your father would be so proud of you, he'd burst. You're kind, smart, brave, and good. Everything he was. Everything he wanted to be." "I'm glad I have you," he whispered. "I know I lost Dad, and Mom did what she did, but I'm glad I have you." "I'm glad I have you too, sweetheart. You saved me as much as I saved you. You gave me a reason to keep going after I lost your dad. You're my second chance, a chance to do things right." The next day, we stood at Marcus's grave. The headstone was simple, but elegant, designed by his former colleagues at the firm. Marcus Daniel Williams, beloved son, father, friend, 1990-2024. Building dreams, one line at a time. Jordan placed fresh flowers on the grave, sunflowers, Marcus's favorite. Then he sat down on the grass and started talking, telling his father about school, about his friends, about the architecture book he'd been reading because he thought maybe he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. I stood back, giving him space, but I added my own silent words. "We made it, Marcus. Your son is thriving. The will Melissa forged didn't matter in the end. Justice prevailed. Your legacy lives on in Jordan, in the buildings you designed that still stand across Chicago, in the lives you touched. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Sorry I didn't hear the cry for help in your voice that last time we spoke. But I promise you this, I will spend the rest of my life making sure Jordan knows he's loved, that he's safe, that he can become whoever he wants to be. The will changed everything, Marcus. Not Melissa's forged document, but your real will. The love you had for your son, the strength you passed on to him, the legacy you left behind. That's what matters, that's what endures. Rest easy, my son. We've got this." As we walked back to the car, Jordan slipped his hand into mine. "Grandma, thank you." "For what, baby?" "For fighting for me. For not giving up. Dr. Reeves told me. She told me that you could have just been sad and let them take me away, but you fought in court and got all those lawyers and proved the truth. You saved me." I squeezed his hand. "You would have done the same for me. That's what family does. We fight for each other." Sharon Peterson requested visitation with Jordan 3 years after the custody battle. After extensive family therapy and with Jordan's permission, I allowed supervised visits once a month. She would never be close to him the way I was, but Jordan deserved to know his mother's family, to make his own choices about those relationships. Melissa sent letters from prison every few months. I kept them all in a locked box. When Jordan turned 18, I'd give him the box and let him decide if he wanted to read them, respond, or even visit her. That would be his choice to make. As for me, I scaled back my work even more. I retired from Morrison & Associates at 60 and started a foundation in Marcus's name, the Marcus Williams Memorial Foundation for Sustainable Architecture. We gave scholarships to promising architecture students from underprivileged backgrounds, funded sustainable housing projects, and kept my son's dream of changing the world alive. I also started a support group for grandparents raising grandchildren after family tragedy, because I learned that I wasn't alone. There were hundreds of us, thousands, stepping up when the worst happened, building new families from the ashes of the old. The will had changed everything, but not Melissa's fraudulent document. That piece of paper had been nothing but lies and greed. No, what changed everything was the true legacy Marcus left behind. A son who needed love, a mother who refused to give up, and a family that rebuilt itself, stronger than before. We were survivors, Jordan and I. We'd walked through fire and come out the other side, and we'd done it together.